Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the more effort you put into fixing your life, the more tangled it becomes? Like you're spinning your wheels trying to be stronger, smarter, more disciplined. But somehow, you just keep drifting further from peace. You wake up tired, not just physically, but spiritually. There's this sense that something is off, that somewhere along the way, you adopted habits that felt harmless, even necessary. But they're actually draining your strength without you realizing it. And the more you feed them, the weaker you get. Not in your muscles, but in your spirit, in your character, in your ability to face life with clarity and control. Now, you might think strength is about dominating your emotions, about grinding through difficulty, or never showing pain. But the Stoics knew better. They taught that real strength isn't loud. It isn't prideful. It's not something you perform. Real strength lives in silence. It's in restraint. It's in the discipline of the mind to remain steady when the world turns chaotic. It's in knowing what to care about and, more importantly, what to let go of. And yet, every single day, we unknowingly practice habits that chip away at that strength, that sabotage our self-control, that make us dependent on things that leave us hollow. You don't become weak because you're lazy or broken. You become weak because you've been misled. You've been told to chase pleasure as a reward for pain, to seek validation when you feel uncertain, to respond to discomfort by reaching for distractions. These are the habits that sneak in while your guard is down, and slowly, they become who you are. That's what we're here to expose. Because once you see them clearly, you can begin to strip them away. And what's left underneath is something powerful, something ancient. The Stoics didn't live easy lives. Marcus Aurelius ruled during plagues and war. Seneca was sentenced to death by an unstable emperor. Epictetus was born a slave. And yet, in the darkest of circumstances, they cultivated peace, purpose, and mental clarity. They weren't perfect, but they saw through the illusion. They understood that most suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from how we respond to it, and that our habits shape our responses more than we realize. So if you feel like you've been carrying a kind of heaviness, a quiet fatigue in your soul, this message is for you. It starts with recognition. The first mistake we make is assuming that pain always deserves an immediate response. Something goes wrong, and we reach for the nearest escape hatch. Food, screens, noise, whatever lets us avoid feeling discomfort for just a little longer. But in doing that, we train our minds to equate discomfort with danger. And once that pattern takes root, our strength begins to rot. We no longer sit with frustration. We flee it. We no longer observe sadness. We medicate it. And every time we run, we reinforce the idea that we are powerless to endure. Now imagine this. Instead of reacting, you pause. You don't flinch. You don't feed the impulse. You breathe. You let the wave crash over you and pass. That moment, that restraint, that is strength. That is the foundation of Stoic mastery. Because if you can endure the discomfort of a difficult moment without needing to alter it, you are free. You are no longer ruled by what happens to you. You have stepped outside the noise. But there's more. Another subtle habit that weakens us is the constant need to be understood. It sounds noble. Who doesn't want to be seen, to be known? But here's the Stoic truth. Your peace cannot depend on someone else's perception of you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." And yet, we live as if every opinion about us matters. We explain ourselves to people who aren't listening. We try to prove our worth to those who've already decided not to value us. And in doing that, we hand over our strength like coins to a thief. What if you didn't need to be understood? What if you could simply be quiet, centered, sure of who you are, and let the world misunderstand you? That kind of indifference isn't weakness, it's freedom. And it terrifies those who rely on chaos to control you. When you stop explaining, stop defending, and start focusing on the only thing that actually matters, your character, you cut the cord that ties your peace to anyone else's approval. Another weakening habit, one that hides in plain sight, is the habit of comparison. You scroll, you watch, you wonder why your life doesn't feel as bright as theirs, and the moment you do, your power leaks. You are pulled out of your life and into someone else's highlight reel. The Stoics warned us of this over and over. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because you cannot become strong while constantly scanning the room for applause. Strength is forged in solitude, in stillness, not on stages, not on feeds. So what do? We turn inward. We start noticing what weakens us, and we stop feeding it. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with honesty, with courage. We catch ourselves reaching for validation, and we pause. We feel the urge to explain ourselves, and we resist. We hear the familiar siren call of comparison, and we choose silence instead. That's the beginning. That's where real transformation starts. In those invisible moments of resistance, what you are doing now is not just watching a video. You are being called to remember something buried deep inside you, a strength you once had, or maybe never fully accessed. The Stoics didn't ask us to be perfect. They asked us to wake up, to stop living by default, to stop confusing stimulation with happiness, to stop letting habits make us soft when life demands that we be solid. You don't have to change everything today, but you do need to be honest about one thing. Are your daily habits making you stronger, or are they quietly making you weak? Don't look away from the answer, because the moment you look it in the eye, the change begins. Let's keep going, because the next habit, the next silent killer of strength, is even more deceptive. And if you don't learn to recognize it, you'll keep repeating it for the rest of your life. It always starts small. One excuse, one moment of hesitation, one quiet lie you tell yourself that you'll do it tomorrow, that it's not a big deal, that you deserve a break. But the Stoics knew that a single crack, left unattended, eventually becomes a collapse. That's why they placed such importance on vigilance, on the small, often invisible decisions that shape your character over time. And one of the most dangerous habits, one that weakens us not all at once, but one day at a time, is the habit of avoiding discomfort in the name of comfort. It's subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as convenience, as indulgence, as the rational voice in your head that tells you, you've had a hard day, take it easy. But here's the catch. Comfort becomes a trap when it replaces challenge. You begin to shrink from effort, from difficulty, from doing the thing that might cost you something in the short term, but would build something invaluable in the long term. And that's the weakness. That's what Stoicism warned us about. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He was pointing at something timeless. Our minds, left undisciplined, will flee from even imagined pain. We convince ourselves that discomfort is dangerous, that struggle is something to be avoided rather than embraced. And so we build routines around ease. We construct lives designed to protect us from friction. But strength doesn't grow in padded rooms. It grows in fire, in tension, in resistance. There was a time when hardship wasn't seen as a failure. It was a rite of passage, a furnace through which character was forged. But today, we medicate pain before we even understand it. We escape before we face it. And slowly, we train ourselves to be weak in the very moments that life is asking us to be strong. Now here's the truth that most people are too afraid to say. If you always seek comfort, you will never find peace. Because peace, real peace, is not the absence of difficulty. It's the ability to stay grounded in the middle of it. It's the inner stillness that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life brings. But you only gain that stillness by walking willingly into the discomfort you used to avoid. So the next time you feel the urge to numb, to avoid, to scroll, to indulge, pause. Just for a moment, ask yourself, is this making me stronger or softer? Am I feeding my resilience or my escape? And if the answer leaves you uneasy, don't run from that feeling. Lean into it, because that is your opportunity. That is your doorway to something rare in this world, self-mastery. Now, let's talk about something even more insidious. Another habit that weakens us, one that the modern world disguises as virtue, the habit of constant busyness. It's ironic, isn't it? We praise the hustle, the grind, the fully booked calendar. We measure our worth in productivity, in checklists, in how exhausted we are by the end of the day. But busyness is not strength. Busyness, unchecked, is avoidance. It's distraction dressed up as discipline. Because the person who is constantly busy rarely has time to think. And that's exactly the point. Stillness is uncomfortable. Silence is revealing. When you stop moving, you start noticing. You start feeling the weight of the things you've been ignoring, your fears, your doubts, the hollowness that creeps in when your days are filled, but your life is empty. So, you stay moving, you stay occupied. Because if you pause, even for a second, the truth might catch up to you. That's not strength, that's fear. And fear, unaddressed, is weakness. The Stoics weren't against action. They were against mindless action. They believed in deliberate living, in pausing to examine not just what you're doing, but why. Marcus Aurelius would begin and end his days with reflection, not because he had nothing better to do, but because without reflection, action becomes chaos. Without introspection, movement becomes meaningless. So ask yourself, honestly, are you filling your days to avoid facing your life? Are you addicted to movement because you're afraid of meaning? If so, stop. Not forever, just long enough to be honest with yourself. Because that honesty will begin to restore the strength that busyness has stolen. And now we come to something darker. A habit that doesn't just weaken you, it corrodes you, quietly. From the inside, the habit of resentment. It's easy to miss, because resentment often hides behind good intentions. You tell yourself you're being patient, that you're being kind, that you're rising above. But inside there's a storm, a quiet bitterness, a wound that's been left unhealed, and instead of confronting it, you carry it. It begins to color your view of the world. You start seeing enemies in every shadow. And worse, you begin believing that your peace depends on others changing, apologizing, understanding. But here's the harsh truth. The world owes you nothing. The apology you never got, the fairness you crave, the justice you demand, you might never receive it. And if your peace depends on getting it, you are not free. You are imprisoned by the very people and situations you claim to hate. The Stoics had no time for resentment. Why? Because it's a form of slavery. You hand over your inner world to those who hurt you. You chain your happiness to a past that cannot be changed. And every day you hold on, you become smaller, harder, more fragile. So let it go. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve freedom. Stop waiting for the world to make things right. Make peace with what is. And from that place of painful, powerful acceptance, you begin to reclaim your strength. There's one more habit I want to touch on in this part, and that's the habit of delaying your inner work, of saying, I'll start changing when things slow down, when I'm less stressed, when I feel more ready. But here's the truth. That moment will never come. Life doesn't slow down. You don't wake up magically disciplined. Growth doesn't arrive. It's built. One moment of courage at a time. One decision to break the old pattern. 1 second of silence in the face of chaos. Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That line should haunt you. Not because it's harsh, but because it's true. You don't have to become someone new. You have to stop being who you're not. You have to stop delaying the version of you that already exists beneath the noise. There is a version of you that is calm under pressure, that doesn't beg to be liked, that doesn't run from pain, that doesn't need to be understood, that doesn't shrink from effort or grasp for comfort or hide behind busyness. That version of you is not a fantasy. It's a return, a remembering, a recovery of the strength that's already yours. But it starts with seeing clearly, seeing honestly, seeing which habits are making you weak, not in your body, but in your being. And if you can keep going, if you're willing to dig deeper, then in the next part, we're going to confront one of the most seductive lies you've ever believed, and the Stoic antidote that will set you free. There's a lie you've been told, not just once, but over and over until it became background noise in your mind. And the lie is this, that your value comes from how other people see you, that your worth is dependent on the opinions, approval, or admiration of others. But what the Stoics understood, and what most people never grasp, is that chasing validation from others is not just exhausting, it's the quietest form of self-betrayal. Because every time you edit yourself to be liked, every time you hesitate to speak the truth for fear of how it might be received, every time you shape your actions to be acceptable to someone else, you're training yourself to need permission to exist. And no one tells you this when you're young. They just reward you when you fit in and punish you when you stand out. So you learn. You learn to people please. You learn to conform. You learn to survive through approval. But that survival comes at a cost, and the cost is your strength. The Stoics believed that the most dangerous place to build your identity is in the mind of another person. Marcus Aurelius warned, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That wasn't just philosophy, that was a challenge. A challenge to look at the ways you've let other people become the judges of your worth. A challenge to reclaim your power from the need to be seen a certain way. And here's where the paradox kicks in. The more you chase approval, the less you have it. Because people sense when you are trying to be liked. They smell the desperation. They feel the neediness, and they pull away. But when you stop needing them, when you are grounded in your own values, in your own vision, something changes. You become magnetic, not because you're trying, but because you're whole. Because people crave authenticity in a world full of performance. So stop waiting for them to tell you who you are. Stop bending your spine for likes, for applause, for nods of acceptance. You were not born to be a projection of other people's expectations. You were born to be free. And freedom, real freedom, begins the moment you decide that your opinion of yourself is the only one that truly matters. But there's another trap, more subtle that many fall into. It's the habit of emotional overreaction, the inability to pause before responding, the tendency to let the world pull you like a puppet on strings. One criticism, one delay, one rude comment, and suddenly you're unraveling. That's not strength, that's slavery. And the Stoics had no tolerance for it. To them, the greatest power you could develop was mastery over your own mind, to be insulted and remain unmoved, to be provoked and remain calm, to be wronged and remain just. That is not weakness, that is power. But most people reverse this. They think being reactive is being real, that expressing every emotion as it arises is honesty. It's not. It's chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line is more than a quote. It's a way of life. It means you stop blaming traffic, or your boss, or your partner, or the algorithm, and you start owning your inner state. No excuses, no exceptions. So how do you build that kind of strength? You start small. You begin by pausing before you react. You notice the heat rise in your chest, the impulse to fire back, and you say, "Not this time." You breathe. You remember, my peace is not up for negotiation. And then you choose your response, not from emotion, but from intention. That's how you change, not in loud moments, but in quiet ones. But this next habit, it may be the most damaging of all. It's the habit of blaming the world for your situation, blaming your past, your parents, your circumstances, your trauma, your job, your city, the government. And yes, some of those things may be real, but here's the Stoic truth. You cannot control what life gives you, but you can always control what you do with it. And if you're waiting for life to be fair before you take ownership, you'll wait forever. Epictetus was born a slave. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but their wisdom was the same. Freedom is not granted, it's claimed. You claim it the moment you stop pointing fingers and start asking yourself, what can I do with what I have where I am? That's the moment you begin to rebuild your strength. Because blame is a drug. It makes you feel good in the short term. It absolves you of responsibility, but it leaves you powerless. And powerlessness, over time, turns to bitterness. And bitterness becomes weakness. You see it everywhere. People addicted to outrage, offended by everything, clinging to victimhood like it's an identity. But the Stoic doesn't go that route. The Stoic says, even if I was wronged, I will rise. Even if the odds are against me, I will try. Even if I fail, I will learn. Because I am not here to be coddled. I am here to grow. And that growth requires one final thing: the courage to be misunderstood, to not explain yourself every time someone doesn't get it, to not water down your values so they're easier to swallow, to not shrink just because someone else feels small in your presence. This is hard, because the world will try to guilt you into being less. They'll call you cold when you set boundaries, arrogant when you own your worth, selfish when you put your peace first. Let them. The Stoics didn't waste time defending themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. They lived in alignment with their values and let their lives speak for them. You can do the same. You don't owe everyone access to your truth. Some people will never hear it, no matter how gently you speak. And that's okay. Let them talk. You keep walking. Because when you stop needing to be liked, when you stop reacting like a puppet, when you stop blaming the world and start building your response, that's when real strength returns. Not the kind that looks impressive, but the kind that is unshakable. the kind you carry quietly, the kind no one can give or take away, the kind that makes you dangerous, not because you hurt others, but because you cannot be hurt by them. And if you can hold on to that truth, if you can live it, then in the next part, we're going to talk about one more habit, the most common, the most praised, and the most quietly destructive, and the Stoic mindset that can break it forever. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly. When was the last time you sat still with no distractions, no scrolling, no noise, no plans, just you, your breath, and your thoughts? For most people, the answer is either never or I can't remember. And that reveals the next habit, the one that disguises itself as productivity. But in truth, it's a quiet poison, the habit of constant distraction. We've convinced ourselves we're just busy, that we're being efficient, staying informed, keeping up with the world. But what we're really doing is running. Running from silence, running from ourselves, running from the truth we don't want to sit with. And the Stoics would have seen it for what it is, cowardice. Seneca warned, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. And that's what this habit does. It scatters your attention until you become a fragmented version of yourself. You're halfway present in every moment, half listening, half living. And one day you wake up to realize you've been alive for years, but you haven't really been here. You've been performing a life, anxiously, frantically, while the one meant for you passed by unnoticed. The Stoic understood the danger of a distracted mind. They didn't have smartphones, but they had their own temptations: power, comfort, ambition, noise. And yet, they chose something radical: presence, stillness, solitude, not as a luxury, but as a necessity for strength. You see, a distracted man is a weak man, not because he lacks intelligence or talent, but because he lacks focus. He lives in reaction mode, responding to every ping, every opinion, every impulse. But the Stoic doesn't live like that. The Stoic creates the space, because only in stillness can you see clearly. Only in silence can you hear your own inner voice, and only with focus can you walk a path that's truly yours. So ask yourself, what's your distraction drug? Is it your phone? Is it gossip? Is it always being busy so you never have to be still? Whatever it is, name it, face it, and then begin the practice of reclaiming your attention, not all at once, but moment by moment. Put the phone down during your meals. Go for a walk without music. Spend 5 minutes just breathing without trying to fix anything. These aren't spiritual luxuries. They are acts of war against the weakness that is slowly draining your life of meaning. But there's another habit, one that's even harder to admit. It's the habit of pleasing everyone, of bending yourself into 1,000 versions, depending on who's watching, of agreeing just to keep the peace, of nodding when you want to scream. And it looks like kindness. It feels like harmony. But at its root, it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being disliked, fear of standing alone. But the Stoic doesn't chase peace at the cost of truth. They know a man who agrees with everyone betrays himself, because strength is not about being agreeable. It's about being grounded. You can be kind and still say no. You can be compassionate and still set a boundary. You can love someone and still choose yourself. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's it. That's the standard. Not if it's convenient, or if they'll still like me, or if it avoids conflict. The Stoic doesn't live by convenience. They live by principle. And when you do that, when you stop trying to please everyone, you discover something strange. Not everyone walks away. In fact, the right people draw closer because they sense something rare: integrity, wholeness. A man or woman who doesn't just speak the truth, but lives it. Not perfectly, but courageously, quietly, daily. So if you've spent your life being the peacemaker, the chameleon, the one who keeps everyone else happy while quietly disintegrating inside, this is your moment. Not to become cold, but to become clear. To start asking yourself, what do I actually believe? What do I actually want? What do I actually need to say, even if no one claps? And then, to say it, even if your voice shakes. Now let me bring you to the final habit we'll explore today. It's the one you'll be tempted to dismiss, the one you might not even see as a weakness. But I promise you, if left unchallenged, it will rot your spirit from the inside out. And that is the habit of complaining. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet, constant drip. The little sighs. The small resentments. The subtle comparisons. The inner monologue that whispers, "It's not fair. I deserve more. Why does it always happen to me?" You may think you're just venting, but in truth, you're rehearsing powerlessness. The Stoic doesn't complain, not because they're naive, not because they pretend everything is fine, but because they understand something deeper. Complaining changes nothing. Action does, reflection does, perspective does. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, wars, betrayals, family tragedy, and still he wrote, "You have the power to choose not to be harmed, and if you choose not to be harmed, you haven't been." That's not denial. That's mastery. Mastery of interpretation. Mastery of choice. Mastery of the self. Every time you complain, you reinforce a story of helplessness. But every time you refuse, when you pause, reframe, breathe and act, you reclaim a piece of your power. So next time you're tempted to complain about the traffic, the weather, your boss, your family, your body, your past, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this thought making me stronger or weaker? And if it's the latter, drop it, replace it, reframe it, find the lesson, find the opportunity. That's not toxic positivity. That's Stoic realism. Because strength doesn't come from a perfect life. It comes from a disciplined response. And that discipline starts inside, where no one can see. In the moments when you choose self-command over self-pity, calm over chaos, responsibility over reaction. Now, if you've come this far, you already feel it. Something is shifting. You're beginning to see how every habit, every pattern, every moment of unconscious weakness can be turned. Not through shame, but through awareness, through action, through practice, through philosophy. And in the final part, we're going to bring it all home. We'll talk about the mindset that ties everything together, the final transformation that separates the truly strong from the ones still pretending. Let's come back to the mirror, because that's where every Stoic transformation begins. Not in the world, not in someone else's behavior, but with the person staring back at you. That's the final habit that weakens people more than any of the others, the habit of blaming. We don't call it that, of course. We dress it up. They disrespected me. Life didn't give me a fair chance. I can't succeed because of what happened to me. And it feels good, doesn't it? For a moment, blame gives you the illusion of justice, of control. But here's the bitter truth. Every time you blame someone else, you hand them your power. You're saying, "You are the reason I can't rise. You are the obstacle between me and peace." And in that story, you become the victim. But a Stoic has no use for victimhood. Not because they're heartless, but because they understand this. You cannot be both a victim and the master of your fate. You have to choose. And if you want to live with strength, clarity, and purpose, you must choose responsibility. Not for what happens to you, but for how you meet it. Epictetus was born a slave, literally. He had chains around his neck and no legal rights. And yet, he said this: "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's not just philosophy, that's a declaration, a promise to himself and to anyone who ever felt powerless. Because power doesn't come from your circumstances, it comes from your response. That's why the Stoics kept coming back to the same question: what's within my control? You can't change the past. You can't rewrite your childhood. You can't erase what they said or did. But you can stop carrying it. You can stop letting it define you. You can stop using it as an excuse to stay small. So if you've built a life around blame, around resentment, around waiting for someone else to make it right, this is your turning point. Let it go. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve freedom. You cannot create the life you want while clinging to the pain of the one you didn't. And that leads us to the truth that ties every habit together, the reason we fall into weakness in the first place. It's not because we're evil. It's not because we're lazy. It's because we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten we have a choice. That's the real illness Stoicism cures. Not sadness, not chaos, not failure, but forgetfulness. The forgetfulness of your own power. The moment you remember that your thoughts are yours to choose, that your values are yours to hold, that your time is yours to protect, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to everything that once held you back. So how do you become strong? Not in theory, not one day, but now? You start by practicing, not waiting for the perfect mood or the ideal time. Just practice. When you feel the pull to scroll endlessly, you pause, you breathe, you choose stillness. When you feel the need to people please, you remember, if it is not right, do not do it, and you stand your ground. When the desire to complain arises, you ask, what can I control? And you take the next step forward. When resentment tries to speak, you choose to release it, because you've realized blame will never build the life you want. Only responsibility can do that. This is the quiet revolution, the invisible one. No fanfare, no applause, just you, slowly building a fortress from the inside out. And when that fortress is built, you become unshakable. Life will still test you. People will still disappoint you. Chaos will still knock on your door. But you'll meet it all with calm, with clarity, with strength. Because you'll know, nothing can make you weak unless you allow it. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the darkness of war, surrounded by betrayal, uncertainty, and loss. And yet, he spoke of virtue, of compassion, of wisdom, of not letting pain define him. He was a man with the power to destroy entire cities, but instead, he chose self-mastery. That's what this is about. Not becoming untouchable, but becoming rooted. So deeply rooted in principle that even if the world falls apart, you remain. And maybe you're not there yet. That's okay. Neither were they at first. Stoicism was never about being perfect. It was about showing up, daily, to the work of becoming someone better. Not for the world's approval, but for your own. So now I ask you, which habit ends today? Which pattern will you refuse to carry one moment longer? Because no matter how long you've lived with weakness, the choice to become strong is always right here, in this breath, in this moment. in this decision. Will you take it? Then start walking. The path is yours now. And if this message stirred something in you, share it, not just with others, but with yourself. Watch it again. Write down what it taught you. Practice it. Live it. Because the only thing more powerful than learning Stoic philosophy is becoming it. This is pure Stoic life. And this is where your transformation begins.